Okay.
Welcome to Credit Union Joe is
There's no light on.
with Josh.
Is there supposed to be a light on?
There is one. It's in the top left corner. Well, it's over here, depending on where you're
All
looking.
right. Well, I'm ready whenever you are.
You're ready? Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to start again. Welcome to
Why
Credit
do you have to
Union
start
Joe
again? Why
is
doesn't that
Disrupted
count?
with Josh. I'm sorry?
That can't count? That can't be the start?
It could have been the start.
All right. Well, let's go.
All right. Today we're joined by Mike Doran, or Doran. He'll tell us which one it is based on where you're at across the world. But he's the CEO of GenFed Financial Credit Union out of Akron, Ohio. Mike, how are we doing?
Doing well. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited to have you. Mike, lightning round, let's learn 3 things about you real quick. What's your favorite food?
That would be pizza.
Pizza. What's your toppings or topping?
Pepperoni and green pepper.
Nice. Love it. Do you fold it?
I'll eat just about anything. New York style, pan, thin crust, you name it.
If it's there, you'll have it. I love it.
Right,
Favorite
yeah.
movie?
Probably say Forrest Gump.
Well,
Really?
that's solid.
Yeah.
Solid choice.
Wide range
Yeah.
of emotions, at
There's
least.
a lot of
A
emotion.
wide range of emotions, good for the kids. Yeah.
Joe, is yours still Cars? Is Cars still your favorite?
Cars 2, actually.
Ah.
The first one, like, if there's a lot of Genesis setting up, Cars 2 really brings it home for me. If you weren't sorry, now I messed it up. If you weren't helping make the credit union difference, what would you be doing, Mike?
Probably go back to, being a fighter pilot. Never was one, in practice, but always a dream.
That goes
I couldn't decide if you meant that you were going to go back to being one there for a second, and then
Right.
then I couldn't decide if you were going to go back and learn how to become one, or just go back to dreaming of becoming one. So either way, it's
Dreaming
still solid.
dreaming is more likely.
Are you
It's
opening
a little
a surf
safer, I
shop while
suppose.
you're dreaming of being a fighter pilot? Is this like a dual dream?
Right.
Well, Mike, I appreciate you joining Josh and I. Today we're talking about becoming a new CEO of a credit union. Really, just first, can you set the stage for us? What brought you to the helm of GenFed?
Yeah, so I spent 19 years prior in auto finance, doing a little bit of everything, and the last 10 years served on the supervisory committee for GenFed. So, over the course of those 10 years, got to know most everybody from the board to the supervisory committee, obviously, to the key players at the credit union. And like most credit unions, it's a pretty flat organization, a lot of tenure, 15 plus years, I'd say is the average on the executive team. So not ever really thinking this would be the path. I was able to form, more genuine relationships with these folks along the way. And then when the outgoing CEO made her announcement and there wasn't anybody internally that was really vying for the position or groomed for the position, the board chair approached me and mentioned it as an opportunity. So, at first it was kind of one of those, haven't been in the credit union business. Am I the right fit? Are you sure I am? More questioning them than myself. And then, through talking to the board chair, what the goals were, and being in touch with some of the CPAs, because I was the chair of the supervisory committee, so I hired our CPA, and talking with him at great length about the movement, he encouraged me to continue down that road. So that's how I got here.
Mike, was there like did the board put together any succession committee or anything like that, or how long was the search process prior? Just curious.
Well, there's just a typical, committee on the board itself, the hiring committee of 3, along with 2 HR people internally at the credit union. I can't say, I would say the search process was probably 6 to 9 months from start to finish. But, yeah.
Joe, put your question aside. I'm so fascinated by this. I'm curious, what was was some of the biggest eye-opening moments from, going from board, right, to employee or staff? Because, and I'm not sure, I'd be curious, but, board, I'm assuming, meeting once a month and fulfilling those requirements and your committee meetings, but it's tough. right? Coming in as a volunteer board member, sitting here, and then being charged as being a fiduciary in that capacity, but oftentimes, not having a full depth or knowledge of the organization, how it all works. I mean, it's tough, depending on how the credit union was started. Like the credit union, the Community Choice was originally a state employees credit union. And so that's the majority of the board coming on, but they don't always have the breadth or depth of knowledge of a financial institution. So I'm curious what some of the most eye-opening moments were or was moving over from board to staff.
Yeah, that's we were a little different. GenFed is, the 7 executives, I would say, the VP and above, have a very firm grasp on everything from regulatory, to lending, to collections, you name it. So, a little bit different than how some credit unions are. We have multiple employees that do a lot of different things. So that was interesting because I came from a big corporation where it was very siloed, very, you do one task, they do this. So getting used to that was definitely interesting, to say the least. Not knowing all the ins and outs and details, along with me just having to put my bias behind me because, I've been to conferences with these employees before. I formed some of those opinions or bias, this, that, the other, but not knowing the inner workings, totally different, So, yeah, big time learning, but having the benefit of knowing everybody and having built relationships prior definitely helped them and helped me. So
was it two-sided? It was a benefit and a curse. Like, so I putting myself in the same spot of being here and then taking the role is I noticed there were 4 kinds of people during succession. There was a group that was like, man, I'm super excited that it's Josh. And then I think there was a smaller group that was, oh man, this sucks that it's Josh. And then I think there was the 3rd and 4th group, which flip-flopped after things went on. And, oh, it's just going to be fun. And then it was like, oh man, there's accountability now. I want to go back to just the fun Josh. So you probably experienced something similar.
Oh, very, very similar. No, and that was, part of the board. There was plenty of candidates that applied that would have brought in the army of people. Yeah. And the board, I got to give them, tip my hat to them to saying, look, the credit union's been well run in the past, and we want to preserve that as much as possible, knowing that I didn't have that, army full of people to bring in. Definitely, leveled a little bit of that anxiety.
Sure.
So, yeah.
So did you feel that the board service, or I guess, over a decade of just institutional knowledge at the high level helped with your transition or created kind of an unforeseen challenge and a little bit of bias? I mean, just kind of go not more so on the strategy side, less on the personnel side.
I would say it helped. It helped because I had been to a couple ALM seminars over the years, so I had enough of that high level. The number side of it, I've always been very in tune to and interested in. Mm-hmm. And then, being as close to them as I am to the team that I have, I knew a lot more about what they had to offer than if somebody came in from another organization or off the street. My team is not one, they are not one to pat themselves on the back. They don't tout how awesome they are, so I could see someone else coming in and going, questioning a little bit more than me, who I've seen it firsthand. I've seen what they've been able to do. I've seen the crisis they've averted, and, I have confidence in them. So that
Mike, how do you being there for a while too, you probably know where a lot of the bodies were buried and also the bad habits, that you've seen along the way, right? So how do you approach that, knowing that you probably have some of these bad habits or, things you'd like to change, but people have, that's the way they've always done it. We've always done it this way. We've always done. How do you address that and still be able to keep the energy and the attitude and the culture where you want it to be?
Yeah, that's that's interesting because, if you can't tell from just the brief time that we've known each other, I probably need to slow down more than anything. So I get that quite a bit. And, that was one of the first conversations we had as a team that, look, I'm going to ask a lot of questions. I'm going to ask why, like a 3-year-old. And the nice part for the team is they realized that I didn't have an ulterior motive generally when I was asking why. It was truly because I didn't know. So, unlike someone who comes in from another organization and asks why, knowing good and well that they are basically saying this is the wrong way to do it, I'm asking why with the true, genuine lack of understanding as to why was this fence built to begin with. I'm not going to tear it down until we figure out why it was put there. So, that helps. But yeah, when it comes to we've done that before, we've always done it before, my response to that is obviously it was a good idea at some point. So was it the execution or the idea as to why didn't it work, So we're trying things that we've tried before too.
I love that idea. I love the constant questioning. To me, I think like sophomore is not fair, but sophomore CEOs, especially in the credit union world, seem to be some of the more exciting ones, or at least early, in the first 3 years or so. It doesn't mean the other ones aren't as exciting, but I got to be honest, I looked across a lot of credit unions and it seems like there are some credit unions' sole purpose is just to hang on to retirement, which I don't think that's the case, right? I think the whole idea of leaders of any organization, especially a credit union, is how do you create relevancy well beyond your time there, right? I've actually said to our board, I'm like, look, you don't want me at the end, right? We got to figure out a plan because at the end, I'm hopefully staring down a beach, and I'm not going to be the same as I am right now. Just facts.
It's like Bill Belichick. I mean, he's a genius at letting go, trading players at the top of their game when they're on their way down.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a question. When you're talking about board, one of the most important things any board of a credit union does is hire the CEO, right? I mean, they have to fill that role. That's probably the most important thing they do because they're for most, depending on how they're set up, is the person that you have the agreement with or contract with, and you're as a board turning over the day-to-day operational functioning to carry out the mission to that individual, right? So what about the thought, and how do you feel about put you on the spot here a little bit, how do you feel about the idea that says, you know what, a board should hire the right CEO, and then for the most part, they got to get the hell out of the way. So that way the CEO can accomplish what they want them to do.
I am fortunate to have that kind of board. And it's hard for me to know anything else because this is what I'm used to and I've seen. But I look at that too and I go, it's no different for you or I or Joe, anybody who leads people, is if you've got the right people, obviously you can't call all the shots and be a Monday morning quarterback or you have to empower your people. So I agree with it. Thankfully and fortunately, I don't have to work that hard on that right now because our board they understand that.
Can I ask you an inverse that I think would be really beneficial for other credit union CEOs that maybe been in for a while or newer that don't have that? Would honestly you be able to have this job and function the way you need to if you had that micromanagement style board, or would you'd be gone?
No, it wouldn't work because every board is going to be made up of 5+ people, and we all have different opinions on everything. And, ultimately it's got to stop somewhere, I guess is the way I look at it. And if you don't empower that person to make those decisions and occasionally make a mistake, they're going to take no chances. And, it's not going to be good for the organization. They have to see the CEO and really the leadership team as the leader. The last thing that I want to have to tell my people is the board isn't in support of this. Partially because there's too much of a gap between their day-to-day versus the board. Unless there's a relationship there, unless they can converge daily, it's not really fair. So
no, I totally. Well, I always think that the board ultimately holds the ability. They could fire the CEO. They could fire me. That's the way I look at it. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, let's not forget if you want me to go out and make decisions and try to make a difference for this organization, and then you think I've went completely in a different direction than we should, you hold the right to fire me. So let's not forget that's okay. What would you, I think it would be powerful for people to know what advice, if you would, or you could give to a CEO, whether new or tenured, sitting in a spot where they do have a micromanaging board. What advice, like how should they approach that board to help them, understand that, hey, this isn't allowing me to make the kind of decision you want to, because of, there's almost a fear-based, or it's very controlled. How would you approach it? As CEO now, but you were a board member, how would you want that CEO to approach you and say, in this capacity?
I would start with the board chair. If I were the CEO, and I would sit down with the board chair and just outline those particular decisions that either were or weren't made, in the additional time that was taken to get to those decisions or execute a plan, because of, I hate to say the red tape, but that's what you're going to have if there's 5 to 7 people all trying to tell you, here's how we want it run. That'd be tough. I mean, I wish I had better nuggets of wisdom there. I've never had to deal with it. But I think it just gets back to communication, and you just have to be upfront with them and, make sure that they understand they're holding you back. I mean, ultimately, we have to make decisions, and this pandemic has been no better, indication of that. How quickly we had to make decisions that were pretty, we're going to close the lobbies tomorrow. It was that kind of decision that we had to make for the betterment of our people and our members, to think that we would have to have that discussion with a board, or we're going to waive XYZ fees. It doesn't allow you to act at the speed that we have to act at these days. So
totally. What a great time to be a new CEO too. Right? Come in.
Yeah, no, there was no manual for this.
No manual. No, if there was, it would have been burnt anyway. Joe, do you got a question, or do you
I'm about to mute you because I feel like I need to take the.
Do you even know where the mute button is? I don't even
volunteer. Oh my God! Don't make me do it. Muted. No, what I wanted to do, I'm going to take our volunteers in the credit union space off the hot seat a little bit, and focus it a little bit back on the CEO. Think about a post-transition. What are the tools or really things or most important assets that for you after post-transition, in the seat as a new CEO, what's been the most important tool or asset?
In the credit union space specifically, I would say the collaboration amongst collaboratives. I knew that it existed in the credit union space, and I guess, assuming most people that would watch this would be in the credit union, movement, and if not interested in it, it's amazing. I mean, I could not have come into this role. I always tell people, even if I was with a community bank, it would be twice as hard to adjust and make this work, as opposed to having, you there, Josh, all the credit unions. I meet with credit unions on a monthly basis. We kind of have our own little 20 groups per se to discuss the challenges and what's going on and that kind of thing. So that's probably the biggest tool, I would say. As for kind of a words of encouragement is, fight the temptation to have all the answers. I am terrible about trying to give my opinion on just about everything. And at the end of the day, I can't make all the decisions. They don't want me to make all the decisions. And the people need to make them. They know a lot better than I do too, which is
what's interesting about your
hang on, Joe, hang on.
Oh, come on. I feel like you've taken up way too much airtime. I have a real question. Just give me one.
Oh, I do too. The closer you get to the top, right? Always in any organization, there's no denying that the closer you get to the top, and especially when you get to what would be the top of the org chart, it gets lonelier and lonelier, and it has to, right? And either if people haven't experienced it, or they will, that it does. How do you deal with that? That there are tough decisions you have to make. You're not always going to be popular. There's a lot that you're carrying in thoughts and worries. I mean, you're taking them with you home. You're seeing them in the evening, on the weekend, something spurs you. Like me, with my wife, she's like, will you shut up about work now? And I'm like, oh, I forgot I do things other than work. And so how do you safely, if you will, and constructively able to offload or let out some of those challenges that you can't talk to people around you about? You could talk to certain people about certain things, but then there's other things they're just yours. How do you deal with that?
That is it's a good thing to get to preface any new CEO or anyone moving up in management that that relationship is going to change with all those your peers, your friends, coworkers, etc. For that reason. And to think that I ever shut it off or stopped thinking about it, I'd be lying. It's constant. I use exercise, soccer, golf, whatever I can do to kind of get out there and do some, mindless work, a puzzle. Those are the things that, your brain needs a chance to breathe a little bit. So it's definitely you struck a chord. I mean, I listen to a lot of books on tape for that reason, because there's a lot of people who have been through that, and some of them it's led to, complete demise for their life, and you can learn from them, so that continual path of learning helps.
I believe you're exactly right. I think people have burnout entirely, not just burnout, just in catastrophic flame out. And that, I would say, that's one piece of advice that oftentimes is not given out to, like you said, new leaders, especially CEOs. I don't care what kind of organization. But if you think of that as one piece of advice that's not often given out, is there another piece of advice that you wish you would have been given, but you have now?
I would say, out of the gate, when I first started, I was singing a song to myself, which I have 3 girls, so it wasn't a song that was on my playlist, but I came in like a wrecking ball. So I think in music, and I'm just so lucky I still have the executive team that I have, being that I came in and was so intrigued at how quickly things could happen. One of the first days on the job, I threw out the idea of a auto refinance mailer, never realizing that 10 minutes later I was going to have a proposal to sign from that marketing, person, which just blew me away. And it made me realize that, you got to be a little bit cautious with your words and your ideas, because, people are going to run with them. I mean, what you say is what they expect. And so I would say, my biggest there would be slow down. It's a journey. It's an evolution. It's not a revolution. We don't need to do it all overnight. But
you find yourself,
I
Joe, I don't even know if are you in this?
I gotta mute Josh. I've already muted him. I can't. I've tried to ask. He's taken 2 of my questions. But one thing I wanted to get back to before we start coming to a close is, you came from, let's call it corporate America a little bit, where there is actual competition. What was the biggest kind of transition or surprising thing moving into what I like to call the co-opetition space of the credit union world?
It's my favorite, kind of unexpected but much enjoyed part of being in the movement, is the ability to reach out to, fellow credit unions and say, hey, we're up against this, we're running into this, what did you do? Sharing policies, sharing training material, sharing anything and everything. In my prior life, to get information on competitors and that sort of thing, you felt dirty. You felt like you were doing reconnaissance work. It was, hey, can I get a copy of this? And even if you got it, it's like, don't tell anybody where you got it. And it's just so refreshing that, credit unions share, and they do it with a genuine heart, that they're not just doing it because that's just how the business is. They're actually people that care about helping other people and realize that we're not really out to get each other. There's plenty of business to go around. So that's the biggest difference for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that makes a huge difference. One thing earlier before Joe cut me off and muted because his timing is awful, but when you were talking about other advice giving, and it's funny you say that about whatever you say is the word, right? It's laid down. Even if you say it in jest, or maybe someday all of a sudden becomes an hour. Yeah, someday we should look at this. And next thing you know, it's, well, I thought you wanted to do it, which is really a great point. Do you find yourself, and I know I'm setting it up as a yes or no, but it's not the intention. Do you find yourself at some point starting to not give answers to questions you're being asked? And so that way people have to discover on their own?
That is my goal.
Yeah.
My personality is not, it doesn't cater to that very well. So it takes a lot of, I have to be thoughtful to slow down and realize that I need to ask them. But that is what I shoot to do and strive to do and to become better at, is what would you like to do, or what do you recommend? Because ultimately, I can't make every decision. I don't want to make every decision. And, I always say, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're probably in the wrong room. And it couldn't be clearer at the credit union that I serve. There's a lot more smart people on my team than me. So, we need to leverage that.
Yeah, I don't even know why people want to be the smartest one in the room. That's such a terrible thing to be, honestly. I hope the whole room is filled with way smarter people than me, because then it only makes me better.
Yeah.
For sure, all the way around. I'm not looking to look. The org chart is what the org chart is. Everybody beneath me on the org chart that's smarter just elevates me automatically. So that's great. But there is that fine line between creating a collaborative environment and a controlling one. It can be thin at times. That's for sure.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Well, Mike, I appreciate your time today. I'm going to let you off the hot seat here. But to summarize, if folks only took a few things away today, it's for being a new CEO, it sounds like be thoughtful with your words and how you communicate. Be sure to empower your team. Find yourself a release, but also continue to be a student so you can continue to be a teacher. Is that pretty fair?
That sums it up well.
I appreciate
Perfect.
it, Mike. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. I'm sorry for Josh and how he didn't let me speak that much or ask my questions and stole them. But this has been Credit Union Joe has been disrupted with Josh.